You know how some pictures stay in your head? Things that happened years ago? I have some of those, and one came up this past week when I saw the new dietary guidelines. It was very hard for me to focus on this strange upside-down pyramid suggesting that Americans are supposed to eat more eggs, meat, and high-fat dairy products than ever before, because I kept seeing another picture. It was my dad in a hospital bed. I was only 27, but that picture was as clear as if he had been there yesterday. My dad saw himself as a healthy guy. He was a physician, he'd been an athlete, and he believed in just what the new food guidelines are talking about: real food, meat and dairy products, fruits and vegetables, not many starches, they'll make you fat, drink your milk, you need that for your bones. And yet, there was my father at 62 with tubes and sadness and uncertainty. He pulled through, but not really. His life was never the same, and although he lived another 20 years, he lived long enough to develop Parkinson's and dementia, and those 20 years were not pleasant at all. So looking at that pyramid that's not really a pyramid, I'm seeing not only my dad in that hospital bed, but all the people who will be filling similar beds as a result of these guidelines. Hi, everybody. I am Victoria Moran, and welcome to the Main Street Vegan Podcast, a special edition. I might even say an emergency episode to explain these guidelines, what happened, and what we're supposed to do with them, or maybe what we can do about them. We have so many wonderful physicians in the plant-based movement that I could have called on, but I went straight to the top and got lucky with Dr. Neal Barnard, who since 1995 has been at the helm of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. I know you know all this already, but Dr. Barnard is the New York Times best-selling author of a whole slew of books, including his latest one, The Power Foods Diet, his treatise on hormonal health, Your Body in Balance, and probably his classic, Dr. Neal Barnard's program for reversing diabetes. Welcome, Dr. Barnard.
Thank you, Victoria. It's great to be with you today.
Thank you. So we've got these guidelines, and I've followed you a long time, and I know you've gone to bat on guidelines before. Are these the worst we've ever seen?
I'm sorry to say yes, at least in the modern era. We first went to court over the year 2000 guidelines, and we had to sue in federal government in 1999 over what was coming out. And the process really has been getting better. By that, I mean, the process of devising the guidelines has been a little bit more industry-free, a little more transparent, a little more, or a lot more consonant with scientific evidence. And unfortunately, that's gone out the window. We're kind of back at square one.
So for people who have not yet read these or read about them, what do they say?
The guidelines came out saying that we should prioritize protein. Now, you might have thought we need more fiber in our diet and more vegetables and fruits, but they said you need more protein. And the amount of protein, there are certain numbers that people use, but the numbers that they gave effectively double the amount of protein that people are supposed to be eating. Now, Americans are already getting plenty of protein. But then it wasn't just the amount, it was also the type. They said, have more meat, have more eggs. And you might be thinking, well, that's cholesterol and bad fat. You're right. And so that's why people were nervous about that. And then right behind that came recommendations to have more dairy products. And so if the guidelines say you need more protein and you should be getting it from meat and eggs and from dairy products, what happens is you're getting more cholesterol, but worse than that, you're getting more saturated fat, the bad fat that drives cholesterol. So when these are being formulated, they were taking some heat from people who could see this coming. And so they then said, well, but you should limit the amount of saturated fat that you have. Well, you can't limit it if you're eating more of the things that have it. So it gets confusing. And then when you get to the part on what if I'm a vegetarian or vegan, they really made people nervous about it, saying here's all the things that you're going to have to plan for, and you're going to be low in this and low in that. And it was really quite discouraging. So that's unfortunate. And the bottom line is, when you look at the 9 people who wrote it, they brought in 9 experts. 8 of them have industry conflicts. 5 of them with the beef industry, livestock industries, I should say. Could be beef, pork, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. 5 of them have dairy, financial links with the dairy industry. 3 of them with low carb industries. And so the point is, the government wanted to have guidelines. In my view, they were failed by industry connected consultants. And it's time for a do-over.
We hear a lot about the separation of church and state, not so much about the separation of industry and state. And these guidelines suggest that there's no separation at all.
You hit the nail on the head, Victoria, I have to say. There are laws to do exactly that. There is a law in the American legal system. There is a law that says that the executive branch is supposed to promote American agriculture. So the USDA is supposed to promote beef and dairy and raspberries and good and bad foods. That's the law. But the law also recognizes that if we're formulating policy on which people should eat, there could be a conflict there. And so there is another law that says all these promotional entities, like the Egg Nutrition Center, their job is to push eggs. By law, they are not allowed to have anything to do with setting policy. They're not allowed to be involved in setting the dietary guidelines. They're not allowed to tell kids what they're supposed to eat in school. Their job is just promote in the marketplace. Do you think they follow that law? I have to say, unfortunately, they violated very much. And when they pulled together this committee, there are also legal standards about the transparency in the process and all this, and they just really ignored all of those, unfortunately.
And what is Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine doing about that?
Yesterday, we filed an official federal petition asking for an investigation and reversal of all of this. We pointed out and there are many, many violations of law and how this was pulled together. And so what we're asking is that the dietary guidelines that were released be retracted. I'm going to call that a do-over. And then we can bring together a new group of experts who really are balanced, and have them start this process over. Or we can recognize that we just had a committee like that. They were appointed in 2023. They finished their work in 2025 and issued a report that we thought was going to become the dietary guidelines, but it unfortunately got thrown in the trash, and the current administration started over. Now, let me say a word though. RFK Jr., who's the Secretary of HHS, has been talking about what people should be eating and so forth. But he's a lay person, of course. So when he hires experts, it's the expert's job to confirm what's true and to educate the government and the public on what's not true. And you're not well served if you hire experts who just falsely confirm beliefs that don't fit. So in my own view, RFK and the government and the American people were not served very, very well by having industry attached experts who are really misleading him and them and us.
When I look at this list, and I don't suppose that this is a full list, I am seeing PhDs and a dearth of MDs. That seems a little bit off to me. So in your dream team, and I know you understand the way the world is, there's not going to be a committee all made up of plant-based people, and that would be construed as prejudicial as this. But what would it really look like to have a balanced group of advisors for something as important as the dietary guidelines for the United States?
Well, there are federal laws about exactly that. And we've needed them for all kinds of things. For example, if you're having an advisory committee about what military hardware should we should we buy, you might have somebody from Boeing on the committee because they're knowledgeable. But if everybody is from Boeing on the committee, then that's going to steer the purchases. So you can have people with various kinds of prejudices and so forth. But the Federal Advisory Committee Act says the committee has to be a fairly balanced committee. The choice of who's on it has to not be influenced by the appointing authority. So let's say I'm somebody in government and I want to steer it. They're not allowed to do that. And it cannot advance, this is the law, it can't advance a special interest. So if 8 of the 9 people are involved with special interests, I'm sorry, that's no good. And you know, PhDs, there are plenty of great PhDs, and it's fine to have them involved. There are many nutrition experts who have PhDs. There are many who have MDs. It's good to have them, but the real key is industry influence. And also, everybody has their own strong feelings about nutrition, no matter who you are. So their job is also just to bring out the studies and bring out the evidence. And I have to say, it's a tough job to be on one of these committees. Christopher Gardner, who is a wonderful researcher at Stanford, Valerie Bloomberg Jernigan in Oklahoma, or Edward Giovannucci at Harvard. These are people who gave a lot of their time in pulling forward the evidence over the last couple of years for their report, which unfortunately got scuttled and replaced by a hastily convened industry-laden committee.
So when we look at a document like this, how important is it really? Somebody might be listening and thinking, oh, so what? The government issues decrees all the time. Nobody cares. When I think about this one, I'm back in grade school with those signs in the cafeteria with the 4 food groups, which was what we had back then. This stuff gets out.
Not only does it get out as sort of educational material, and you know, all the posters and things and the educational messages and the public service announcements saying, eat more meat, eat more cheese. I mean, that's where we're going with this, if there isn't a do-over. But it's a little bit worse than that. The federal school meals programs have to adhere to the dietary guidelines. So if they're saying, well, a vegan diet may not be very healthy for you, or whole grains are not really important anymore, which is what they're saying. Beans are an afterthought. Meat comes first, dairy comes second. What we're going to have is schools looking to follow those guidelines, serving that and putting it on kids' trays, the kids eating it and learning that that is what they should be doing in the future. We already have an unprecedented level of childhood obesity. It's going to get worse. We already have unprecedented levels of diabetes and frankly, just insulin resistance and prediabetes in kids before they get their high school diploma. That's going to get worse. But Victoria, let me tell you one thing that I'm really worried about here. There has been a concern, an understandable concern about processed foods. You know, there's a lot of junk, donuts and so forth, and that's not health food. But some people have gone so far as to say that anything that's processed could be a big issue. And they made up this word ultra-processed foods to include everything from cereals to breads to spaghetti and to things like hot dogs and sausages that really are bad. But when you look at them, what you discover is a couple of things. Number one, some of these ultra-processed foods are actually not associated with disease at all. Like your breakfast cereal with soy milk. Those are called ultra-processed foods, but they're associated with reduced diabetes and reduced cardiovascular disease. Even if your breakfast cereal might even have colors in it or even some added sugar, it's not associated with diabetes or hypertension or cardiovascular disease. It's associated with less. But these new guidelines say, don't eat processed foods. Okay, so what we're doing is we're taking away convenient foods that people eat that reduce their risk of cardiovascular disease. But we're doing something worse. Back in the 1990s, we had really an epidemic of birth defects leading up to that. I'm talking about neural tube defects, spina bifida. It's caused by a deficiency of a B vitamin called folate. You need folate. It's in foliage. It's in vegetables. Well, a lot of kids aren't eating their broccoli and so forth. They're folate deficient. And a 17-year-old girl gets pregnant. She finds out she's pregnant. That pregnancy has advanced 4 weeks, 8 weeks 10 weeks before she knows it. If that child was not exposed to adequate folate, birth defects are more common. Well, the FDA in 1998 said, kids eat cereals. Let's put folic acid in the cereal. And you know what that did? That caused the amount of birth defects to drop dramatically. Now, these guidelines, do you think they make an exception for those? It says don't eat any of that. Don't eat those foods. Don't eat a vitamin B12 fortified food. Don't eat calcium fortified food. Don't have soy milk. It's hammering the processed foods and taking them out, including the ones that were specifically formulated and designed to protect the unborn child. And so we're going to have the unintended consequences of this higher diabetes, higher cardiovascular disease, and unfortunately, babies being born unprotected against birth defects and families that are going to have to deal with that for the rest of their lives.
That is horrifying. Let me ask you something else. I know that today, someone with heart disease, or in some states, I believe risk factors for heart disease, can go to a program like the Ornish program, which today is fully plant-based, or the Pritikin program, largely plant-based, and do a reversal recovery program that Medicare or Medicaid would pay for. Are we on the road to having that change?
I certainly hope not. And I'm going to say I don't think so. I'm hoping, first of all, the Ornish program is terrific. It has been life-changing and life-saving for thousands and thousands of people. And same with the Pritikin program, and others are really, really good and should be protected. And and I want to thank Dean for his advocacy in having Medicare come in and recognize that this is a way to empower people. And I have trouble envisioning that being reversed. And as you know, Medicare is headed by Mehmet Oz. And although Dr. Oz has been controversial in many ways, he is a smart individual who recognizes the Ornish program is a lifesaver. And I would be shocked if he would want to unplug that.
Well, that's good. I'm looking for some good news this week. I want to ask you about these folks that are behind this work. Do you believe that they really believe it? Do you believe it's all economic, or do you believe that they say that this other science, this very solid science, doesn't really matter? Could you get inside the head of one of these folks?
My dad grew up in the cattle business, um, as did his father, my cousins, and when I was a kid, I actually drove cattle to slaughter with my dad and my uncle. And the folks in the meat industry are honest business people. And they're like the tobacco people before them, who they're trying to make a living for their families. And then, people raising tobacco in the early 1900s were as surprised as anybody to learn that the cases of lung cancer that were getting more and more common were because of their product. And the government took stock of it and said, well, we've been supporting these products for a long time. We've got to change policy. Well, back in the early 1900s, we thought beef is a good thing. And, it's loaded with protein and all kinds of things. And then the killjoys at the Framingham Heart Study in the late 1940s said, wait a minute, these foods are driving the risk factors. They're driving hypertension, they're driving high cholesterol levels, they're leading to heart disease. And so we've had to have a big rethink. And frankly, the process of getting away from tobacco took a long time. And the process of breaking up with beef took a long time too. And we're really not quite there yet. But the people that have been involved in these products believe in their products. And whether that's just because they grew up with it or whatever, it's real. I think it's really hard to separate that out. But and I know that John Robbins, who grew up in the Baskin Robbins empire, is able to say, wait a minute, dairy is not healthy. Yes, this is the family fortune that I'm supposed to be inheriting, but he wanted nothing to do with it. So people can change, and our society is going to have to change too. And all the people who have been wedded to it have to change. And I hope they do.
So we keep hearing about Jeffrey Epstein, who's a dead criminal, and now we've got Dr. Atkins, who is a dead physician, in my opinion, misguided on nutrition. What is the deal with this diet? I remember it, Dr. Barnard, from the 60s, because I was a fat kid and my dad would bring me home diets from medical conventions. And he came from one in Las Vegas and he brought this diet called Stillman, which was Atkins before Atkins. And it just keeps reincarnating with a different name. Help us.
You're absolutely right. The uh, the diet industry is a little bit like the cicadas. Here in the DC area, these cicadas emerge from the ground and they're buzzing in the trees and they're mating and they do their thing and then they go back in the ground. And they wait 17 years in the ground. And then they come back again. And while they're in the ground, I think they're writing low carb diet books because they emerge again and again. And then you forget about it and they come up back again. I mean, a low carbohydrate diet, when a person takes all the carbs out of their diet, they lose weight. Typically because carbs are about half of what we eat. I'm talking about beans and potatoes and sweet potatoes. These aren't unhealthy foods, but if you just stop eating half your calories, you're going to lose some weight, except that you're leaving in your diet the most unhealthful foods. And sooner or later, your appetite is going to say, I'm not getting enough calories. And you eat more unhealthy things. And so your weight comes back up and your cholesterol goes up with it. And people have been really harmed by this approach. That doesn't mean it's not a fad, and it's there. And so you're right. Of the 9 people writing this report, 3 of them had low carb industry connections, and that's very unfortunate.
It is indeed. Now, talk to us, Dr. Barnard, about nutrition in general. That is a science, at least it's supposed to be. Now, I'm not an expert on geology or nuclear physics or any of those, but my layperson's understanding is that when they come up with a fact, unless it is scientifically proven wrong, that's a fact. You can count on it. Gravity is going to keep us stuck here. People aren't arguing that. But with nutrition, it's so much opinion. So is this a science? Is it a religion? What is it?
Yeah, you're right. There certainly are facts, but they can be undercut by addictions.
Mm.
Cheese, for example. And people make exceptions for things they love. And you have industries promoting these things. Um, and it's all kinds of things. The fast food industry has signed contracts with the US government to promote cheese. For example, McDonald's or Burger King or Taco Bell have signed contracts with the USDA to make sure that there's more cheese. And this is part of the American program to promote American agricultural products. And I can show you those contracts. So I guess my point is that facts and logic have almost no role in human behavior. And what does control human behavior is sort of what's in the wind, what's in our culture, what is being promoted, what we're already used to. And what I think is the most important moment in a person's life is when the breastfed baby is now sitting in the high chair at about 4 or 5 months of age, and mom, well-meaning mom or dad, takes that first piece of meat and sticks it in the kid's mouth. And what does the baby do? The baby spits it out. Baby doesn't want it. It's kind of weird. But mom's patient. She knows that, or thinks that this is good. And this is protein, and this is going to help the baby. So she puts it back in, and the kid spits it out again. Sooner or later, mom will win. And from that moment, that child will develop a preference for that food. And fast forward, that baby is going to be your dad in a hospital bed. And cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's disease and all these things that are linked to that kind of diet are going to emerge. So we have to go back to that moment, and we have to have good guidelines based on facts. And the facts are not hard to find. We have observational studies showing us that people on a plant-based diet, and ideally a diet with no animal products at all, I'm talking about a vegan diet, healthiest, they have the healthiest body weights, the least risk of cardiovascular disease. That's the way to go. And those observational studies have been translated into randomized clinical trials, like the studies we do, where we have people with diabetes, with weight problems, and you put those diets to the test. and you publish those findings in peer-reviewed journals and you make those facts available. They're there. The evidence is overwhelming, but culture can override that, and that's where we are.
So these guidelines, if you're not able to undo them, will last for 5 years. Is that correct?
We hope to undo them. I mean,
Good.
our legal petition to the government asks that they be withdrawn. If we get no response to our guidelines, we will litigate against the federal government. We have done that before, and we're ready to do that again. We've won that before, and I expect we will win again. But absent this process, the guidelines by law are to be or are supposed to be reformulated in another 5 years' time. That process should not wait until 2031, though. It should start typically about 3 or 4 years ahead of time. And it starts with picking a panel of experts who do not have an unbalance of interests and can do the work that we need them to do.
Well, it's so strange and difficult for lay people when they trust something like this that changes so frequently. I mean, for example, dental care, that's pretty standard. We have been told brush and floss and those things for years and years and years. And nobody ever says, no, don't floss, stand on your head. It's like, no, brush and floss and don't eat much sugar. You can kind of go to the bank with that. But when these nutrition guidelines change and they're all over the place, especially these, which didn't just change a little bit, but they literally turned that pyramid upside down, it's very hard for people to trust anything. They're going to trust commercials.
The press on this has registered that fact, I think, that there's something wrong with these guidelines. And even people who have been supportive of them for whatever reason have said, well, here's what we like. I mean, they do mention vegetables, they mention fruits, and that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Everybody's found something that they don't like.
Okay.
And so I think the contrary voices are going to be loud. And I think people are going to say, well, for my child, I want healthy foods. And by the way, not all the news is bad. Just a few weeks ago, the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act was passed. And there's a silver lining here. This was a bad law that was being promoted to get whole milk, full fat milk back into schools. We knew we couldn't stop it. It was going to be passed. So what we did is we worked on Capitol Hill to amend it so that a school can serve cow's milk, but they can also serve soy milk. And if a parent sends a kid to school with a note saying my kid needs this, the school has to provide it. Soy milk I'm talking about. So that's the law now. So what that means is, yes, there are guidelines. These good new guidelines say, have your kid have milk. Well, you don't have to do that. And there's contrary legislation that will support you.
This is excellent. And you're so positive. Does that come from coming from North Dakota?
Maybe it comes from having my OJ berries this morning.
Could be. Okay, well, thank you so much. And everybody, let's support PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM.org. They do such good work and they have done it for such a long time. So please check them out online, on social media. We'll put all of that contact information in the show notes at mainstreetvegan.com. And while I have you, Dr. Barnard, give us a little review of your latest book, The Power Foods Diet.
Oh, I have to say, Victoria, this is the funnest book that I've ever written. Because as you know, I've been telling people that it's a good idea to not eat meat. And that's true. And it's a good idea to avoid animal products, and that's true. But in the Power Foods Diet, it came from a study. The real genesis of it was 2015. Harvard University researchers said, if you eat more of certain foods, you're actually going to lose weight. What they did is they followed more than 100,000 people, and the more they ate of certain specific foods, the more weight they lost, which is something you wouldn't have thought. But certain foods will kind of crowd the bad ones out. Certain foods have certain chemical constituents that boost the metabolism. And so blueberries and strawberries and cruciferous vegetables and green vegetables and certain kinds of melons, that if they're in your diet, you're likely to lose weight. And the more of them you eat, the better. So I worked with Dustin Harder and Lindsay S. Nixon, and we just came up with lots and lots and lots of recipes using these power foods. And the food photography that Dustin did is about an inch away from food porn, I want to tell you. I open this book and it's like, wow, this is a diet? I don't know. But anyway, people have been using it. The recipes are really fun, and it's helping people to lose weight in a way that is just, it's not punishment anymore. It's fun. These foods work. They're quick. They're easy. So anyway, that's the Power Foods diet. It's been really, really fun to work with this.
Now, a lot of people would say, oh, we don't need to worry about that anymore because we're in the age of Ozempic et al. What do you think about those drugs?
Yeah. First of all, apart from the fact that they're pricey, and are on the verge of, well, they're making a pricey medical system even more so. Most people who start them stop them. And most people who start Ozempic or Wegovy, which are the two different names for semaglutide, one for diabetes, one for weight loss. Most people who start them don't like the GI effects that they're going to have, or they don't like the expense, and they quit. And whatever weight you lost comes back roaringly fast when you quit. Much faster than if you were following, say, just a healthier diet and you quit that. The weight comes back. With these, it comes back really, really fast. And the list of side effects is getting longer and longer and longer. And we're doing a big study now with older people, average age 71, who are looking to lose weight and improve diabetes. And what we're finding is the weight loss we are seeing from just getting good support on a low-fat vegan diet. The weight loss we're seeing is about the same as with Wegovy. And all the side effects are good ones. Their blood sugars get better. Their cholesterols go down. So the GLP-1s, we can certainly live without them. And at the Barnard Medical Center here in DC, we never use them at all.
Well, that is good to hear. So I know you're a very busy man. I could talk to you all day, but out of respect, I won't. Just tell us your final words for what's important. What are you excited about? What's going on? What's new?
Well, here at PCM, we're involved in some studies that I mentioned. And I have to say, when we work with people who are about to change their diet, in fact, some people listening to this right now, you might see yourself in this. You've heard somebody say, gee, a vegan diet is good. I don't know, am I ready for that? In our studies, the people who are about to start are kind of like 14-year-olds at their first school dance. They're like, I'm not so sure. I don't know. I'm kind of shy. Well, what we do is we grab these folks, and the people in this study are up in years. We take their hand and we jump in together, and we're not dancing. What we're doing is we're cooking in the kitchen. We're making foods, and we're going vegan. And I'm not meeting you where you are and walking you through baby steps. I'm pushing you in the deep end. We're going vegan now, because our goal is to cure these problems and change our tastes and love it. And the point that I'm making is I am excited about the fact that the process of change is easier than you ever thought possible. People will change. Why? Because they see a big result. And when that happens, everything else gets better and their family gets influenced too. So I'm excited about the fact that people can change. They are changing. Our culture is changing in a very, very good way. And yes, there are setbacks here and there, but we're going to work on those. We're going to do our best to counteract that.
Over the setbacks and on we go, with great respect and admiration for everything that you have done for years and years and continue to do with more energy than ever. So everybody, pcrm.org, and the show notes are at mainstreetvegan.com. And if you would like to subscribe to the newsletter there, you will get yourself a really nice ebook called Recipes to Help You Age Like a Yogi. So thanks so much to Dr. Neal Barnard. Thanks to everybody for listening. So let us go out and make Main Street vegan.